Welcome
Hello.
to Intersection Chats. Hello. So, today we are going to be talking about the intersection between personal brand story and storytelling for sales. And I am super excited to have here today Karis. Welcome. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And it's a really interesting concept, and I have no idea what you're going to ask me. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Nice. So I am, for those who don't know me, I am Reme Mancera. I am a personal brand story strategist. And please tell us a bit about who you are and what you do.
My name's Karis Gill. I live in Edinburgh. I collect things which have strawberries on them, and I'm a storytelling for sales trainer. So I teach people how to use your stories to turn them into sales machines that feel really authentic at attracting and converting clients.
That's awesome. I am looking forward to hearing from your experience. So let's start with the idea of this. Usually is about how our topics are connected, like how they intersect. Our topics are really close, but I
Yeah.
would love to know in your experience how specifically personal brand story interact with storytelling for sales.
Well, I think personal brand story is really interesting because if you look at a brand, you can have a brand story and then you can have a founder story. But often the personal brand story is really a founder story. But if you don't have a founder led brand, then you'll just have a brand story. So I think there's actually a lot of confusion as what is the story? Is it the story of why I started my company? Is it the story of the brand in total? So there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of, storytellers who haven't really, got a strong opinion on this either. But I tend to lead with founder story. It carries all the weight for me more than a brand story. But I guess a founder story would come under personal brand story for you. They'd be in the same category.
Mm.
And so I use Founder Story to go to events like networking events, and it's a really authentic story that when I meet people, if they're my ideal client, they'll go, "Oh my goodness, this is exactly what I need. I'd love to connect with you and get to know you more." But then you go from that stage to use more storytelling, and this is where the storytelling for sales comes in. So once you get them onto a sales call, it's about painting a picture of what it will be like for them to work with you and to get the results that you give them. And by using story on those sales calls, we've been able to increase conversion rate from an average of 15%. That means if you've got 10 sales calls, average person will convert between 1 and 2, and we convert between 8 and 9, so 85% of sales calls by using story. And it's so authentic. It feels really good because I remember when I used to go on sales calls and it was so like I was taught all of these icky sales things that I had to do, and I just felt like that knot in my stomach going. And now it's just it's like a lovely conversation where it's like, if I can help you and this is what it's going to look like for you, taking someone on
Mm.
that journey. So they do work very closely together. I separate founder story and brand story personally.
Mm. That's super interesting. I would love to share a bit about how I approach it. So you have
Yeah.
so what I do is I approach it like instead of looking for one big story, I help people to identify 10 meaningful moments in their journey. And each of them is connected to a specific factor of what they offer. So, in a sense, it's a combination of their business and their story. And I call them story connectors because and I represent with a Venn diagram. So, the idea is that, yeah, there are 10 categories. One of them, for example, is the audience. So, what is one story of your journey that is connected to the people that you work with, and then related to your unique approach, how maybe other people are offering something similar but your approach is different. Always we bring that combination, right? So again, this idea of maybe in a past work experience or in a academic background, how there are some elements there that are reflecting what is important to you, how you do your work, and this idea of what, like, why you wanted to do this, but also highlighting how you do it in a different way. So this idea of course in personal brand differentiation is key, right? And I feel like for sales as well, you want people to understand what is different in your angle. So that's the approach. And then for combining this as a similar as a founder story, they will use several of the story connectors together, but they have this set of stories to play with, and it's kind of doesn't need to be big or epic, but it's something meaningful. So when you get the context, you get the idea of how they are connecting with your business, with your brand.
Oh, it's really interesting. You start with 10 different stories and thread them together instead of trying to map out what is your one founder story. It's an
Yeah.
interesting approach.
And it's connected to what to my own story, because I felt really overwhelmed at the beginning when I started my own business. Everyone
Yeah.
telling me that you should share your story. And then I got to personal brand strategy, and there your story is, of course, one of the pillars. And this idea of, okay, how I approach this, because in this way doesn't feel right. I don't feel confident sharing. I don't feel like it's relevant enough. So all of that. And then I saw the same with my clients, feeling that idea of, oh, if this is not relevant. And then through the work, it's like, okay, let's try this way. Let's split that and try to make. And now it's like built-in block set. So you have your
Yes.
set of stories, and then you play with them. And maybe in a sales call, you bring one specific story connector. But then in another set, like you are speaking on stage, and then you use others and you play with them.
Yes, I've definitely done that before because while I have multiple founder stories, there's one which is I know is going to have the biggest impact. The problem is if I've gone there in the room and chatted with lots of people and they already know it, and then you get the opportunity to speak on stage, I wouldn't want to repeat it. So I have others as well, but they're not designed in the same way to show the client. And I'll give you an example. So when I was 10 years old, I was severely dyslexic. I have reading age today of 9 years old and a writing age of 11, 12. And so when I was 10, I was the only one in my class to fail the 11 plus. My teacher called me stupid. And instead of doing what I really wanted to do, which is I wanted to be a storyteller and a writer, I was like, I'm not intelligent enough for that. So I'm going to go and do art instead. So now the fact that I'm doing storytelling for a living, that is a beautiful story that comes full circle. But because my clients aren't 10 years old feeling stupid and dyslexic, they're not in that space, that story is not going to show a client, oh wow, this is the amazing results I get from you. It's just a lovely full circle story about myself. So while I have multiple, I definitely have the one which is perfectly designed and curated to bring in leads and show off my best work.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because it's that you have those versions and you play with them depending on what is the scenario or the space, who is the audience. I always like to talk about how, depending on the audience, maybe you have in front of an audience that is your ideal target audience, that you are potential clients, but maybe you are in another space where it's more like referral opportunities and things like that. I work a lot with service-based businesses, so referral is a big thing for them. And then you play with that, right?
Yeah, I do that one if I'm in front of kids or I go into schools and talk at all, because it's bringing back to their age and where they are right now, and I flesh it out more. That's a really basic version of this, character arc of the story. But it wouldn't be something I would use to expect a result from. It's more to connect with somebody, emotion.
Yeah. And how you, when you are doing, I know that you do your trainings, you also have a community. So how invite you to people to start about looking for the storytelling pieces? Like how you approach that for someone that is new to your way of working? So what is your invitation for them? Like the first steps?
Depends who they are. So if I meet someone and they go, oh my gosh, I have to learn more about storytelling. What can I do? I'm a founder. I send them and direct them towards my training. And the idea is that story is throughout your business. It's not like just one story that you need. I know you mentioned you've got help people with 10, but it's not just one story you need. It's just story throughout the whole thing, like with every conversation. So I don't just teach people to do that one founder story. It's how to actually use stories as part of every single conversation that you have, how to use it as part of sales. Do you know what I mean? The whole sales process, how to sell from the stage if you're a speaker using story, how to use story on LinkedIn to attract and convert clients. So I send people there because I've got all of these training modules on how to do it. And then I come live once a week, Q&A, ask me anything. And that's where like the real magic happens, where, do you know what I mean? I rejig their stories, because for me, it's so easy to go, this is the good juicy bit. This is the bit which we need to kind of take out a bit. But it's so hard to do for yourself. Even me, to do my own stories is so much harder than to do it for anybody else. Do you find the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. In Spanish, we have a saying that is in the house of the ironsmith, they use wooden knives. It's like you brand, for example, for myself, I do personal brand story, and then I was like procrastinating my own thing because it was so hard to I cannot do it for myself. I need help from someone else. So totally that point. And I in your content, I saw that you are highlighting this idea of how you love your favorite part is like the live questions where people
Yeah.
ask you, and that I resonate a lot because that's like, as you said, the juicy, you can in the moment see how they see, oh, I didn't thought about that in that way, but it makes a lot of sense. So you can see how impactful is like changing the lens or giving them a narrative angle that maybe they didn't think about.
Yeah, absolutely. So someone came to me the other day and they said, I don't have my first client yet. How can I post client stories? And I was like, okay, look at real scenarios of people that you've spoken to who you can help and say, Claire, I spoke to Claire at an event. She had this problem, flesh it out, use a fake name and say, this is what I would do if Claire came to work with me. And you're sharing that story of how you would help Claire and taking them on the journey. So she'd never thought of, do you know what I mean, that before, of how she could use it without that very first client. Was, I said, do swaps, do you know what I mean, help 3 clients with this and they help you with their skill. Do you know what I mean? So it's not, do you know what I mean, free, do you know what I mean, but it's some sort of swap that you get from it. And then you've got your client stories and case studies that you can pull from these things that you do. There's so many ways to gather stories. And another person who has a very personal topic she talks about, I'm going to say the equivalent is like menstruation. Do you know what I mean? It's not, but it's the equivalent. So I said, okay, next time you do one of your workshops, have a moment where you get people to share their own stories together, go round and listen to them, and your story gathering stuff for your next workshop of different, do you know what I mean, experiences that people have had. So many different ways to gather stories. And for me, I'm never short of stories. It's more how to find the right one and present it correctly. Do you find the same, that it's not a shortage, it's the presentation which is the challenging part?
Yeah, I feel like the same. There are so many sources of different stories. It's like, okay, what is the angle that I want to use? And also a lot of this, I work a lot with people that they go into podcasts as a guest. And then it's like, okay, here we go. I am sharing the same story in the same way. For the listener, maybe it's the first time, but you are sharing the again with the same way. And it's like, okay, how you can play with that and even share the same story but making different changes in the angles. And then also, as you said, like the delivery, maybe you share in a short way or in a more extended way depending on the space that you have for that. So yeah, for me, I feel like I haven't, because sometimes when I say, yeah, I work with in this way and help you identify 10 story, and then I'm like, I don't have 10 stories. Like I haven't thought one person that is not having more and more than 10. It's just a selection, but of course, usually you will have much more than that. So, um, what you say about someone that they don't have work with someone else before, I always invite people to think about, okay, what is a natural skill that is valuable in this new thing that you are trying to sell, because that is something that has been there before, you have used in past work experiences, is something that is showing up in other moments. How bringing that is like, okay, you may know a methodology, you might know how to do the work, but also you have something that is from you that is valuable and is valuable for your clients, so use that as a way to highlight that specific valuable skill as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different ways, if you haven't got your first client, to bring in storytelling and create really good content. I'd say the most important thing is that you don't bring the energy that you haven't had a first client yet. If you bring in that big success energy, you know you're really good at what you do, and you just need to bring that across. That's, more important than, having your first client. And I've seen people get their first client on LinkedIn quite quickly, bringing that big success energy and having great content, were others who are actually really good and have, can demonstrate it with the 100 clients they have, not bringing in any through LinkedIn because if they don't feel the part with their energy.
Mm, yeah, yeah. That I feel that's super important, and one of the things to me um, is like when I know why I'm sharing one specific story, like what is the reason and how it's connecting back to what I want to offer and what I want to highlight. That gives me a lot of confidence because I have the clarity of, okay, I know that this is the reason why I'm sharing this, and I feel like the same for clients. It's like, okay, now you have the strategy, now you have the clarity on which are the stories that you want to start using. You can build up that confidence, and you show up in a different way because you certainly have like, okay, yeah. And I work a lot with people that they are in a transition in their business, so they are repositioning themselves, so maybe they don't have like case studies for the new thing, but they have been working before, so they know their stuff. But they are now in this moment of, oh, I have this lack of clarity on how to do it in a concise way and all that. So that idea of, okay, having the control or feeling confident sharing your stories and using storytelling for that process, bring that success energy that you mentioned. Is like, yeah, you know your stuff, you are showing up with confidence, you know that there are like common threads in your journey that bring you to this point, and everything is feels disjointed, but when you look closer, it's like, yeah, there are a common thread, everything works together and it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Storytelling is one of those things which is really easy to understand all the principles. It's actually very challenging to get it right and to put it together. And I always say to people, like, you don't have to be perfect. And that's the problem is people feel like, oh my gosh, until my story is absolutely perfect. I put out very imperfect stories all the time because if I don't have time to write the most beautiful, polished story for 3 hours every single day for LinkedIn, but it's getting stuff out there, like an impolished story out there is way better than something that's taken you ages to write. Do you know what I mean? You put out once a month. Keep putting stuff out consistently and keep, do you know what I mean, having a go. And even if you don't, do you know what I mean, have, do you know what I mean, the most incredible, do you know what I mean, story that you figured out, if you use storytelling elements like dialogue, have a character that's emotional, all of these elements in it, it's still so much better than if you don't have any storytelling elements. So, what would you say is the biggest mistake that you see people make with their storytelling online?
I would say feeling the pressure that they need to overshare,
Okay.
like in the sense of they get this idea of, okay, I need to share things, and they are sharing something that they don't feel comfortable with because somehow they, again, they don't see the connection with their business. And it's just, I have seen people just sharing their founder stories as if it's a CV kind of style, where you are just chronologically sharing
Yes.
what has happened in your life. And then it's like, first of all, you don't need to do things chronologically when you are using storytelling. But then also it's like, what is the connection back with that? And you feel unsure because they don't see that connection, but they feel the pressure of, okay, I need to share this um, journey that I have, but then it's just data, but without the storytelling part, without the connection. And it's like, okay, this is the context of why I do this. And then I highlight certain parts strategically, really intentional, and that makes more powerful, more impactful what you are sharing, as if it's just a list of data, if you will.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you mentioned about people worrying about oversharing, because I was on a call with a client, I'm going to say about 4 weeks ago, and we spoke about being vulnerable. And I didn't realize she misunderstood what I said until she said, oh, I can share about my mum dying 10 years ago, and I can share about the 4 miscarriages that I've had. And I was like, it's so interesting. You hear vulnerable and you go to what's the biggest, worst trauma of my life. And I think that's what the mistake that people make. You absolutely can be vulnerable without sharing that. Being vulnerable could be saying, I woke up on Monday morning, I saw the 25 emails in my inbox and my heart just absolutely sank. And I felt really, really miserable about it. And the one I felt most miserable about was that one at the bottom, because it's been 7 months and 4 days and I still haven't responded. And I haven't responded because it was such an exciting opportunity that I thought, what if I mess it up? Do you know what I mean? What if they don't like me? So instead of getting back to them, which I should have done, and I just can't forgive myself for missing out on this opportunity. So there's ways that you can be vulnerable, but you're not sharing your biggest trauma. You're sharing the everyday thoughts and feelings that come up, and that's complete vulnerability. People going, I was really excited to launch, and actually I only sold, do you know what I mean, 3 places, when really I wanted to sell 5, and I was really disappointed in that. These things are all very vulnerable. And so this doesn't have to be oversharing, but there does need to be sharing of emotions and how things make you feel, and there needs to be some negative emotion to some positive. So I was working with this organization, I was doing a full day training for them, and they're a charity that help children who have disabilities. And we were talking about the first day of school for these parents, and they were really worried about, do you know what I mean, painting, do you know what I mean, the kids in a negative light, etc. But I said the negative feeling could be just the mum worrying about her kid's first day of school. But then actually the kid came out and was like, oh, that was amazing, I had a great time. So it doesn't have to be that the negativity is actually anything that's happening. The negativity could just be the thoughts in your head. And that's, do you know what I mean, goes for most, do you know what I mean, things, is all how we think about it. So if we don't really care about the really negative thing, then nobody else will. It's like if your house burnt down and you wrote on LinkedIn, oh, my house burnt down, it's not really a big deal, do you know what I mean? I don't really mind it, not really missing anything, then no one's going to care. But if you go absolutely devastated, then people will care, because if you've added the emotion. So even if, you know, you add the emotion to something that nobody else would really bother or care about, like I was absolutely terrified to go to my first networking event, we will care and we'll feel that, even if we've been networking and we have no problem with it, because we can see you care and you have these emotions. So yeah, I do agree with you with oversharing being one. I'd say the biggest mistake that I see people make is they take out emotion, and they use often like business language. They'll write I wrote for a client a really beautiful story. So they had been made redundant on maternity leave, and they was wanting to start a business. So this was that big first post about them being made redundant. So I wrote a story about the moment they were in a coffee shop breastfeeding their 4-month-old baby boy when they got that email through letting them know that they were being made redundant. And so I took all of these beautiful moments, then, you know, the absolute despair to the absolute, actually, I'm going to have a shot at starting my business. But they took all of the emotion out. So when they posted it, it read like a reporting article rather than an emotional story. And it could not possibly have the effect of storytelling without the emotion. Yeah, do you find it's hard for clients sometimes to accept that emotion is really good in storytelling and business, and it's actually what we want?
Yeah, you know what? I with one of the last clients that I have worked with, for her the problem was that she put a lot of context in the story. So she was like sharing the whole thought process to arrive to that point, and then kind of she didn't have the space to go deeper into the emotion side. So that's something else, like how you bring context without a lot of tangents, because that's another thing. But this idea of the emotions, yeah, absolutely. I feel like whenever someone is worried about the privacy, I am a really private person. So that's an important piece to me. I always tell them, like, you can share things. First of all, you can decide to not share. And that's totally okay. You don't need to share all your pivotal moments, all the stories that has made a turning point in your life. And then if you decide that you want to share a bit of that, you can decide the level of detail that you go, but overall focusing on the emotions and focusing on the lessons that that moment bring you. I feel like that's the point where you can talk about something that is huge for you, but you don't need to share any details. And I always like to use the examples of health. Let's say if someone is sharing that, yeah, I have someone in my family has an health issue, so now I need to prioritize and I am rescheduling things, and go to the emotions of how in those moments everything change priorities and you really understand what is more important. So people will relate with that. You don't need to share who is the person, what is the relationship with the person, if they are in the hospital, what is the problem. That is circumstantial and you don't need to share any of that. But then maybe someone else is working around diabetes and then they use that examples as a way to connect with, I have been there as a relative. So again, in that case, maybe in certain contexts, makes sense that this person mentioned that this is related to diabetes. But you are the one deciding the level of control, and totally with you in the idea of bringing the emotions, even if it's someone that doesn't have lived the same level, that same experience. There are emotions that we will relate as another human being, like you are, as you say, reading those emotions, reading that those feelings is like, yeah, I can relate to that. I resonate with that, even if that experience itself, I haven't lived that same experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and the emotions is the most important part with that. If we have an experience, for example, our parent, do you know what I mean, having cancer, do you know what I mean, and going to hospice, we've all felt the feeling of despair and do you know what I mean, absolute, we've all probably got grief at some point that we've experienced, or sorrow or helplessness. So even though we haven't experienced the situation, we've experienced the emotion.
Yeah.
So if you tap into the emotion, that's a universal, do you know what I mean, thing that we can all understand and go into. What would you say is the number one storytelling tip that you give people?
The first thing that I invite people is always to think about your why, in the sense of the context of, because to me that brings a lot of information about why you work around a certain group of people or around a certain problem or need, because that brings a lot of context about what is important to you and why you decide to work around that. Because to me, as in the other side, when they are the user or the one buying, it's, I feel really connected when I understand why the person decide to work on that and how is that connected to their own life story. And so there I can really connect. Otherwise, it feels more transactional without the context. When I understand the context, it brings more meaning to me. So that's why I invite people to start with that, analyzing, okay, why you are focusing on that, why this is important to you, and you really want to do more of that, where that came from. That elements is where we can start digging.
I assume that's specifically for personal brand stories.
Excuse me?
Right. I assume that is
Yeah.
specifically for personal brand stories.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is interesting because the biggest mistake I see people making with personal brand stories is they say why they wanted to run a business instead of why they wanted to run that specific business. So they'll say like, oh, I was made redundant and because of that I needed a job Do you know what I mean? And when they
Yeah.
do that as part of that's the core pillar of their brand story. They don't end up looking like an expert and really good at what they do. They end up looking like, oh, I really, do you know what I mean, needed to get some money in. So somebody please, do you know what I mean, buy from me. It's not the same like strong energy. So yeah, I can see the why being really important with brand story. I think for other stories though, I wouldn't say the why is as necessary, because stories could be used in conversation just to like connect with people. And there it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter the why as much, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, yeah. I always say that with the stories, the story connector specifically, it provides three elements. One is context, then connection and contrast. So with the context, it's like you are trustworthy, but then with the connection, you feel that you are showing that you are someone relatable, and then with the contrast, that how you are someone unique. So that combination of the three elements, I feel like in every story that you are sharing, there are a bit of that, and maybe in one of them is more like element, and in the other. But that combination, I feel like is really powerful when you are deciding, okay, this story is really bringing those elements to the table.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I get that.
nice. Um, how you because you work also around brands that are not personal brands, so they don't have the face of someone. How have you seen, if you have seen any change at all in the last few years, about people like more interested in showing the founder brands or the people's brand stories, sorry, in the sense of, okay, we are a commercial brand, but we see the value of storytelling, and specifically from per people, and not just the brand as an umbrella. How have you seen any changes in that?
So I've seen storytelling being taken more seriously by CEOs who are, do you know what I mean, especially going for funding. And the idea is if you're going for funding or investment, there's so many companies out there who you're competing with, and a lot of them are really good. So it's how do you stand out? Well, you need to get the investors to feel something. They have to feel, oh my gosh, if I don't get involved in this, I'm going to miss out. So that fear of missing out. They've got to get them on board with their journey. You're not going to do that if you report data and information at people. You're going to do that by gearing up excitement of, this is why this is so exciting. This is what we're doing. This is our plan. We need this money. And with this money, we're going to do this really exciting thing that you absolutely have to get on board with. So it's the idea that storytelling is not seen as storytelling. It's threaded throughout things that you're doing already to be more persuasive, such as pitching, such as sales calls, such as team meetings to try and unite your team. Because as soon as the brain hears a story, it gets really excited, assuming it's a good story. Do you know what I mean? It gets really excited and it's listening, it's engaging, it wants to know more. As soon as you info dump, it's exceptionally boring. Do you know what I mean? We switch off. Now, who wants their team members to be bored at their team meeting? Who wants their clients to be bored at a team presentation? Nobody. So people are seeing storytelling as a tool. I would say it definitely helps that all the data points towards storytelling, because for generations we've had organizations which is, we need the data and the evidence, and if there's no data and evidence, we're not going to make that decision. But if you look at the data and evidence, it shows that we are emotional human beings who don't make decisions led by data and evidence. We make decisions led by the subconscious, which is emotion, it's feeling, do you know what I mean? It's gut, it's all of these various aspects. So if we're trying to sell to somebody and we're coming in with all the evidence or the data, and they're making an emotional decision, we're not appealing to the most persuasive part of their brain. But if we tell them a story of what they can achieve, how they can feel when they're getting the result, what it's going to be like, so they can imagine it, and we captivate their imagination, they're going to be making the emotional decision. And we need the data to back it up and let them go, well, Peter had the same result, Jennifer had the same result. We give all of the different, data points as well, but they're led by emotional decisions. So yeah, people are realizing actually the data points towards storytelling, and since we love data so much, maybe we should take storytelling a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, and I feel like, as you are saying, it's like you can make the data more memorable thanks to storytelling. So work
Oh
with
yeah.
that, use that as a tool, to put together the two working together and make more a bigger impact.
I mean, data storytelling is fascinating. Like, it's really, really interesting. Some guy wrote 3 giant textbooks on it. There's so much. I've not read them. There's so much to it. But really, in this world of AI, where there's so much content being put out there, and it's strips of emotion, it's strips of story. You can tell when a story is written by AI. It's got very obvious beats to it. There's a lot of noise out there. So when you tell authentic stories, suddenly you're doing something which your competitors can't copy because they don't have your stories. You're saying things which bring in emotion, and the people, well, if every brand is, putting out the same AI content, but you're saying, actually, my name's Karis, this is why I care about you, this is what I did for another client, this is how it's going to be. Like, suddenly they feel that emotional connection to you, they feel like you care, and they want to know more. So in the AI world of over content producing, storytelling is a phenomenal skill, because we all have access to the same AI tools and we're all using them to optimize. But the teams who invest in those soft skills, how to tell story, how to communicate effectively, how to be more persuasive, how to be super clear. And I was working with this client yesterday on their pitch deck, and they're pitching for, a really nice big pot of investment. And the brand was a very, I'm not going to say what it is, but it's something like an electrical component. Do you know what I mean? Like, how do you find a story amongst electrical components? And we sat for 2 hours, and we needed a story for their pitch that led up to that key moment of, we need the money and how we're going to spend it. Do you know what I mean? How we're going to spend it to turbocharge our growth. But in the end, the story was so clear and simple. Do you know what I mean? It was just a very, very simple narrative arc. So they gave me like textbooks and textbooks, and I was able to pick that emotional story among it that is so clear to a judge who has no idea what a technical part is. Do you know what I mean? We don't really need to know what the technical part is. We just need to know the commercial story. How, do you know what I mean? You've got all of these orders coming in, how you need to get this new premises to buy these new machines in order to expand the business. Do you know what I mean? We just need it so clear and simple. So we massively overcomplicate our storytelling by putting in all of these bits, and especially if whatever we're doing is somewhat technical. You know what I mean? It should be so everybody in the room can understand the story and you don't lose anyone. So you can add technical things if you have a room full of technical people.
100%. Yeah, I love that, because it's like going to the simple part that can bring all that element of really getting people involved. And no matter if you don't have the technical knowledge, you get involved into the story, and then you get to the point where, okay, actually, this is why we need this money, and this is how we are going to invest. And I always like to invite people to think about how your stories create unique analogies, unique examples. So maybe I work a lot with coaches, and they have maybe the same kind of methodologies with others. And it's like, bring your unique example, bring analogies from, I remember one specific client, before being a life coach, she was working in a lab as a scientific, and she used an example of the lab about how you can question things, even what are protocol writing in black and white. And she's using that idea, that story, as a way to amplify this concept of question everything, even myself being coaching you. And again, no other person will have that same story, because something unique to her own experience. So using that is something that, again, with this idea of the memorability, is intentional. So it's not just randomly sharing one story from the lab. It's something that is connected to this concept of question things, but at the same time, it's giving the possibility to use analogies and use a certain creative concept, if you will, because of your background. So using that, I feel like it's really powerful. Even with the images that you share and all of that, you have this creative moment element that you can play with. So again, bring the fun part and the experimentation. I feel like storytelling It's something that you can practice and you can get more used to, and it's something that I invite to think about as an experiment. Try with it and see what the people react, how they like, they engage more with, and all that. I feel like that idea of I need to have my perfect story before I start sharing it, as you were saying before, is like, practice it, give it you the try, and not wait until it's perfect, because there are not such a thing, in my opinion. It's always, you will see always tweak to make. It's like, practice and give yourself the permission to make it not perfect, but make it.
I love that. And do you know what it reminded me of when you said that? So this painting behind me, if anybody's on audio, I'm showing a painting of a bunch of strawberries. So I painted this about 4 years ago. And when I started the painting, I had no idea how to paint a strawberry. So you can see the ones that I've painted that don't look very good, do you know what I mean, are the ones, do you know what I mean, on the outside. But I kept trying different things with different strawberries. And I kept experimenting, and at the end, I got what I believe is the perfect strawberry in the painting, but it took all of these attempts to do it. Now, when it comes to storytelling, what people do is they pick one strawberry and they just keep working on it and working on it and working it and working and working. They're painting over and over and over and over it. When really you just need to paint the strawberry and post it. Write the story, tell the story, and put it out there. Next story, do it and put it out there. And when you have the experience of putting things out there, getting feedback, moving on to the next one, you improve so much in your skills. And this whole painting was a big experiment. I didn't look at any YouTube video or anything. I just kind of went through it. It was just all, a big experiment. And it is with storytelling as well. You will notice it's an art of managing a room. And I did the stand-up comedy course because one of my friends posted on LinkedIn a couple of years back. They said, "Hi, we're looking for stand-up comedians who also run businesses and can talk about entrepreneurship." I went, "Oh yeah, that's me. Oh yeah, that's me. I'm a stand-up comedian." He was like, "Oh great, well I'll put you down to run this fringe show then." I'd never done stand-up comedy in my life, but how hard could it be, right? So I took this short course online and I put together my own stories. And it was a complete experiment doing it. But I stood in front of that stage having no idea if anyone would laugh. And there were 60 to 100 people in the room. Do you know what I mean? And I was lucky it went fantastic. But I was also prepared for it to absolutely bomb. Like, I was mentally prepared for it to go absolutely rubbish. And I think sometimes when it comes to our storytelling, we wait till the environment is safe before we post that story we've massively overthought, where sometimes you need to put the underthought story into a really big environment, and that's where you learn the most. And it's about just telling stories as much as possible, being brave in the stories you tell and the situations you tell them in. And I got such amazing feedback from that. I've gone on to do other stand-up comedy performances as well, but also I learned more from doing that stand-up comedy routine about managing the room, about managing people and their reactions and suspense. And it's changed the way I teach pitching. It's changed the way that I teach people when they're on the stage and they're trying to sell from stage, because if you just learn so differently when you put yourself in uncomfortable environments to share your story, and the feedback that you get is a huge learning experience too. But for many people, that big room will be LinkedIn. Do you know what I mean? That big scary room full of 60 to 100 people who, do you know what I mean, are literally waiting for you to fail on stage will be LinkedIn for them. It will be such a huge deal to make that post of a story on LinkedIn. So it's all about, you just need to post it. And you'll know if something feels right. Do you know what I mean? If something feels icky or unauthentic, or like you're pushing some vulnerability for the sake of likes, you will know. Do you know what I mean? You will feel it.
Yeah. I agree on that. It's like, if you feel icky, the person receiving somehow will feel it too. So yeah.
Some people feel icky about the whole concept of sharing any part of their story, and there's elements of, well, we'll need to get past that, and we get past that by just posting.
Yes. And again, back to this idea, for me is like connecting to the idea of knowing the reason I am sharing a specific story or why I am doing this, like how it's connected to what I want to. Maybe I want to reach out to more people, and this is a tool for doing that, or having the clarity on why I'm trying this and what is the goal of this. That's helpful for me to decide. Okay, yeah, it makes sense that I do more of this. It makes sense that I put myself in this uncomfortable situation, but I know how it's going to help me grow and how it's going to help me to maybe reach out to more people that I want to work with and such. So yeah, I feel like that idea of, yeah, experiment, being okay with getting things wrong and tweaking and keep improving them without waiting to be perfect, which is going to be difficult. Um, so thank you so much. We have been talking about different things, and I feel like we can talk about more, but let's try to start wrapping up. So I always like to invite the guests to think, and myself, to think about a way that summarize that connection between our topics. So between the personal brand story and the storytelling for sales. So how will you summarize that, those two concepts?
I would say your personal brand story is like the first story that you would tell and that people would often know about you and connect with you. It's a story that people tell about you when you're not in the room. So for me, it'll be, oh, Karis, she's the girl who grew her company to multiple six figures in sales using storytelling. Oh, do you know what I mean? Like, you have to go and chat with her. So whatever story you share, people will be sharing it on your behalf behind your back. Do you know what I mean? So you need to get that story quite, do you know what I mean, hammered in. And it's a story you share at networking events, when you meet people, if you're on stage, and it's meant to show exactly what you do and that you're really good at it. But then you go from that point of posting on LinkedIn, having newsletter, the stories which are going to guide your potential clients and leads on that journey to booking a call with you and going, oh, I think they can really help me. And then when they book that call with you and you jump on that call, you need that story-based sales call so they can imagine what it would be like to work with you, and they can feel it, and they can, I mean, imagine getting the results as well, and all their questions are asked. And then you've got the other ways that you tell stories about, do you know what I mean, the clients that you've worked with, do you know what I mean, after you've worked with them, and you collect those testimonials from the people that you've worked with to put back into your content. So story goes throughout the whole marketing and sales process. So a big part for me is I talk on stage, and when I talk on stage, I use story to get in leads. But the founder story or brand story or personal brand story, there's so many different names and they're all slightly different things to different people, is like the first one. It's like the first one I recommend people bash out and get right.
Mm. Yeah, I feel like the combination of those two is having clarity on that personal brand story elements and then incorporating them in your storytelling, but going beyond that with your client stories and with the key elements that are differentiating to your brand and to what you do. I feel like that's an incredible asset for your business that some people are missing out. So I invite everyone to analyze, okay, how I can bring more of this, because that's going to help me to connect with my audience and for them to understand what is different, what stand out about my business. So yeah, inviting everyone to think about how I can incorporate more of this.
Yes, but I think also people get their brand story very wrong. And so before you get your brand story, make sure that it makes you look good. Do you know what I mean? Before you do it? Because many people have a brand story that doesn't make them look good at the very specific thing they're trying to sell. So make sure at the end you look like an expert in the thing that you're trying to sell. And there's many different ways that people go wrong with the, do you know what I mean, that brand story. So it's not just good enough to have a story, you've got to have the right one and a good one.
Yeah, I feel like the selection of the parts that you want to share, that part is really like challenging for some people. And this idea of, okay, I have all these moments that I can choose from, how I choose the right one and how I share them in a way that makes sense, that is connected to what I want to achieve and all that. So it's kind of a process. But yeah, I agree that starting with understanding which are the moments that you want to highlight and how to do it in a way that makes you, yeah, your authority stand out and your differentiation stand out. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Well,
Okay.
thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. How can people learn more about what you do and connect with you?
So I'm Karis Gill. I'm on LinkedIn. It's KarisGill. Think of Paris with a K. And the best way to reach out to me through LinkedIn. And I have a newsletter there. I also do a training which people can come and join, and they can learn all about storytelling for sales, which is, I mean, something which is definitely a highlight of what I do, and I really enjoy doing. It's me live every single week. But then also I come into and do storytelling for sales trainings into organizations as well. So LinkedIn's the best place to reach out to me. Everything is on there.
Amazing. For people that are curious, who are curious about how I approach storytelling and the story connector framework, they can go to my website, and there are examples and questions that they can apply to themselves, so they can start thinking about how to figuring out which personal stories to share for their brand storytelling. So thank you so much again, Karis. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
For everyone watching, see you next time.